Hello and welcome to another episode of Friendly Friday, a weekly series where we take a look at budget, standard or modern decks and take them through a friendly league on Magic Online. This week we're taking a look at a red, green and colorless Eldrazi Ramp in standard, and as you can see we've got lots of older cards all the way back from Battle for Zendikar, as well as a lot of new cards from Hour of Devastation. So as we are a ramp deck, of course we need some ramp cards, so let's go over all of those. We've got 4 copies of Beneath the Sands, which for 3 mana looks for any basic, puts it on the battlefield tapped, so you're a regular ramp card, but it also has cycling for 2 mana, so late in the game when we have plenty of mana we can cycle away any Beneath the Sands to look for additional action cards. We also have 4 copies of Weirding Wood, which is an enchanted land, and then the enchanted land can add 2 mana of any color to our mana pool, so essentially just ramps us for 1, and also makes a clue token, so we can sacrifice that for 2 mana to draw a card, so that also helps us find more action. And we also have 2 copies of Spring to Mind, and the Spring half also just looks for any basic land, puts it on the battlefield tapped, and then later in the game we also have the Aftermath on Mind, which lets us draw 2 cards at instant speed, and you might be wondering how we are going to cast Mind since we don't have any blue mana, but of course thanks to Weirding Wood, that can also add 2 blue mana to our mana pool, we can cast the Mind part on Spring to Mind. Then we also have Hour of Promise, which is one of the most important cards in the deck. So this is a 5 mana sorcery that lets us look for up to 2 lands, and they can be any kind of land. Then if we control 3 or more desert cards, we also get to make 2 zombie tokens. So this not only helps us ramp into lots of mana, but it also makes some chump blockers to buy more time. And then finally we also have Neheb the Eternal, which might not look like a ramp card, but is definitely in the deck to help us ramp into lots of mana, because for 5 mana we get a 4/6 with Afflict 3, so if the opponent blocks Neheb, they will lose 3 life, and then in our second main phase, so the post-combat main phase, we can add a red mana to our mana pool for each life that the opponent lost, so if they blocked Neheb we get to add 3 red mana to our mana pool. If they did not block Neheb, we get to add 4 mana to our mana pool, so this can help us accelerate from 5 mana all the way up to 10 mana on the following turn, which is where we want to be in this deck. Of course we also need to survive in the meantime, which is why we need some interactive cards. We've got 4 copies of Abrade, which is a nice split card that can either destroy an artifact or deal 3 damage to a creature. We also have 3 copies of Tormenting Voice, which helps us smooth out our draws a little bit. If we have too many ramp cards or too many payoff cards, we can get rid of those and draw 2 cards. We also have 2 copies of Sweltering Suns, which deals 3 damage to each creature, and in matchups where we don't need the effect, we can just cycle it away for 3 mana to draw a fresh card. And we also have 2 copies of Hour of Devastation, which deals 5 damage to each creature and each non-bolas planeswalker, and all creatures also lose indestructible, so this can also take care of the indestructible gods, which is a big deal. We also have 2 copies of Goblin Dark-Dwellers, which is kind of an intermediate threat that for 5 mana is a 4/4 with Menace, and it lets us cast any instant or sorcery with converted mana cost 3 or less from our graveyard when it enters the battlefield, so this can let us recast one of our ramp spells or removal spells from the graveyard. So something you may have noticed by now is that the main deck isn't running any 4-drops, and of course the reason is that our plan is to cast one of our many 3-drop ramp spells on 3, that way on turn 4 we'll have access to 5 mana, and then you'll see we have lots and lots of 5-drops in this deck. And then once we do get to a lot of mana, it's time to cast our big Eldrazi spells. We've got 2 copies of Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, which when we cast it can exile up to 2 target permanents. It's a 10/10 indestructible, and when Ulamog attacks, the opponent has to exile the top 20 cards of their library, so regardless of life total, Ulamog will usually close out the game into attacks. And then we also have 3 copies of Kozilek, the Great Distortion, which when we cast it, refills our hand until we have 7 cards in hand, and is also a 12/12 with Menace, and Kozilek also lets us counter opposing spells by discarding cards with the same converted mana cost from our hand. And then taking a look at the mana base, which is very important, of course we've got a number of basic lands which we can get with our various ramp spells, 3 forests and 3 mountains. Then we've got a number of dual lands, we've got 3 copies of Game Trail, which enters the battlefield untapped when we reveal a mountain or a forest from our hand. Of course the basic lands count, but we also have 4 copies of Sheltered Thicket, which counts as both a mountain and a forest, so we can reveal that to Game Trail so it comes into play untapped. And the Sheltered Thicket also has cycling too, so we can also cycle this away late in the game in order to find more action spells. Then we also need some deserts to turn on Hour of Promise. We've got 4 Hashep Oasis and 4 Ramunap Ruins, as well as 1 Scavenger Grounds, which can also help us deal with graveyard decks. And last but not least is Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, which, as long as we control 7 or more lands, can tap to add 2 colorless mana to our mana pool for casting colorless spells. So of course this helps us cast our 10 mana Eldrazi, and searching up 2 copies of Shrine of the Forsaken Gods with our Hour of Promise can let us cast an Ulamog or a Kozilek as early as turn 5, so definitely one of the key cards in the deck. Now let's go over the sideboard real quick. We've got 1 copy of Chandra's Defeat, which is great against any decks running Chandras and Glorybringers, comes in against the mono red deck of course. 2 copies of Magma Spray when we want some early interaction, can deal with recursive threats like Relentless Dad or Scrapheap Scrounger. An additional Sweltering Suns for creature matchups, comes in against zombies. We also have a Sand Strangler, which can come in against zombies and the mono red deck when we want to buy some time and take out a key card. We also have 3 copies of Druid of the Cowl, which is a nice 2 mana ramp card that can come in matchups where we actively want the 1/3 body. 3 Tireless Trackers, which can come in against the grindy control matchups. We've got 2 Arborback Stomper, which can gain us some life against the aggressive red decks, and then 2 Crook of Condemnation, which can come in against all the various Graveyard and God Pharaoh's Gift decks. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the play, and let's take a look at our opener, which unfortunately doesn't have any ramp cards. So this is a mulligan. This hand we can definitely keep, and land we will put to the bottom with our scry. And interesting question, what do we lead with? I think we lead with the Ruins. This might make our opponent think that we're on the red deck. And we want to keep our basic forests and mountain in hand in case that we find our game trails like we did here. So now we can play game trail, reveal forest and pass a turn. We could cycle the Beneath the Sands, but I think we're better off just casting it on turn 3 instead. Opponent with an interesting start. Lumbering falls into Evolving Wilds to get a Plains, and they're just gonna pass it back. So now we just get to cast our Beneath the Sands. I guess we could have played our Hashep Oasis instead of Forest in case we wanna Hour of Promise and don't wanna get any deserts with it. So here we'll just get a mountain and pass it back. So did not find any of our 5 mana payoff cards yet, so hopefully we can draw one of those on our following turn. Meanwhile, the opponent hasn't played a spell yet. Alright, there we see a Lambhold Pacifist, which is just a 3/3 at the moment. And alright, we drew one of our 5 mana cards, not really one of our big ramp cards, but still not a bad draw, as we get to play out our Goblin Dark-Dwellers and recast our Beneath the Sands to ramp us some more. And we'll go get another mountain here and pass it back. The Lambhold Pacifist doesn't get to transform, which is important. And we added a 4/4 menace to the board. Opponent with a Tireless Tracker into Canopy Vista, so they do get a clue here. And alright, there's Hour of Promise, perfect. So now we get to play out our Hashep Oasis. I guess we can attack first, since we're fine trading the Dark-Dwellers with the Tireless Tracker here. Or we can just keep it on defense, but we're gonna get 2 zombies here, so don't really need the cards on defense. So sure, let's attack first with the Dark-Dwellers, see if our opponent wants to block. Our opponent takes it, and now we get to cast Hour of Promise. And just go look for 2 Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, since we have the 3 required deserts in play, and get to pass it back. And next turn we should be able to cast our Ulamog. Opponent sacks a clue with the tracker. And they're gonna tap out for a Selfless Spirit, which is certainly acceptable. So now the shields are down, and we know we can resolve this Ulamog. So let's have a look. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you'll have 2 untapped mana, so we even get to cycle the Beneath the Sands as well, which is nice. So let's cast Ulamog, and I think we just get rid of 2 lands here. I think that's the best way to prevent our opponent from recovering. Cast Ulamog, and with the trigger, I think we just get rid of the white sources, since our opponent could have white removal spells that exile our Ulamog. And alright, our opponent scoops it up. So on to sideboarding, up against a banned creature deck. So our 5 mana Hour of Devastation should be pretty good, as it also prevents Selfless Spirit from making anything indestructible. I don't think we're sideboarding much in this matchup, to be honest. I could see bringing in Druid of the Cowl, since our opponent's probably not going to have too much removal, but it's not great when we still keep in our 2 Hour of Devastation and 2 Sweltering Suns. I think our main deck configuration is fine, and we might reevaluate after the second game here. Alright, this time we will be on the draw. I imagine our opponent will have brought things in like Negate that can counter our ramp spells, but this hand is quite good. We've got 3 lands, multiple ramp spells, and then our nice 5 mana Hour of Promise. So looks like a solid hand. Could die to a quick start from the opponent, backed up by some disruption in the form of Negate, but I don't think we can mulligan this. Opponent leads with Canopy Vista, and I think we'll lead with a Ramunap Ruins and pass it back. We drew kind of all of our deserts here, so we will take some pain in order to cast our spells. But there's a Sheltered Thicket, so I think... Let's see, this is actually an interesting decision. We can play the Sheltered Thicket to prevent taking damage from casting our spells, or we can keep it since we might want to cycle it in case we don't find any action. I kind of still want the 5th natural land drop, and I don't want to take a bunch of pain, so I think I'll play it here. But there's certainly situations where I would have kept it in hand to cycle it away. Opponent cycles a Cast Out, which is the kind of card that can get rid of one of our Eldrazi. And they'll go with a Bygone Bishop, so they get a clue if they play a creature with convert mana cost 3 or less. And Sweltering Suns will be good if our opponent plays out a bunch of creatures that don't involve Selfless Spirit. But for now, I think I'm happy just casting a Beneath the Sands. So let's do that. And get a mountain, I think. And say go. Alright, there's a Tireless Tracker, so I think we'll just be firing off our Sweltering Suns here. Just to get rid of those 2. And there's also an Hour of Devastation. Maybe that changes things a little bit, since now we have an answer in case our opponent does have a Selfless Spirit. But it still seems okay to just fire off the Sweltering Suns here rather than the Hour of Promise. So let's play out the Weirding Wood, enchanting our Ramunap Ruins here. Get a clue. And then we can still play out our Sweltering Suns, add 2 red and a colorless. And get rid of the opponent's creatures and pass a turn. Opponent with another Tireless Tracker into another land. So they have plenty of clues. They're gonna sacrifice one of them. Another Beneath the Sands, so let's see, we've got 5, 6, 7 mana to ready, so we can Hour of Promise plus cycle a Beneath the Sands. Or we can just sacrifice a clue, I guess. I think we want to Hour of Promise first to get rid of a few lands in our deck, so we're more likely to draw some of our Eldrazi. So let's play the Hashep Oasis. Cast Hour of Promise. And get 2 of our Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. I could see getting a Scavenger Grounds as well, but I don't think our opponent uses a graveyard much, so let's just get 2 shrines and then pass it back. Opponent gets another clue. Declaration in Stone, alright, that's fine. We're not gonna get any clue tokens for it, but at least that's 1 declaration less for our Eldrazi. They're gonna sack another clue for the tracker, and they're gonna hit us for 5. And end of turn, we're just gonna sacrifice a clue. Another Weirding Wood to draw. And alright, there's a Kozilek. Don't have any 2 mana cards in hand to counter another Declaration in Stone on our Kozilek. Could also see casting Hour of Devastation now that the tracker still dies to it. Opponent could have a negate for the Hour of Devastation, which could be a reason to just go for the Kozilek instead. Yeah, I think we just go for Kozilek here. Draw 3 cards. Alright. We would have liked to draw land here, but still got to draw 2 Hour of Promise, which isn't bad. Opponent sacks a clue end of turn. And there's a Declaration in Stone, which we can counter by discarding Abrade. And no attacks from the tracker, that's what we would like to see. And there's a mountain which we can play. So I think we want to cast Hour of Promise here, just to get some more zombies. And then maybe... So let's see, now we've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana at the ready, so we can cast a double Hour of Promise here, which I think is what we want to do. So let's add some green mana. Opponent could have a negate, but no. So now I think we can get double Shrine still. And then cast another Hour of Promise. And this time we can get some of our deserts. Let's get a Hashep Oasis and a Ramunap Ruins. And attack with our Kozilek. Opponent with an Archangel Avacyn, so that's total of 10 power, so they will get to just block our Kozilek, but our Kozilek is gonna survive, luckily. Could have tried to attack first and then play the Hour of Promise, because if our opponent had made the play with the Archangel Avacyn with all our mana untapped, we could have followed up with an Hour of Devastation, killing the tracker and the Avacyn. So we probably should have considered attacking first there. But if our Hour of Promise doesn't resolve, then we don't have any blockers back, which would have been bad for us. So Avacyn gets in for 4 damage. And the tracker gets in 2. Interesting. So if Avacyn transforms, it still only has 5 toughness. So our opponent can sacrifice 3 clues, bring the tracker up to 8 toughness. So I think we just block with everyone and see what happens. Opponent kills 3 of them, so Avacyn will transform, but we do still have Hour of Devastation. Sylvan Advocate, so feels like the opponent has a negate here. So we would like to draw a 2 mana card so we can counter the negate with our Kozilek. So Avacyn transforms, zombie dies, and we take 3 damage. And there's a Sweltering Suns. Cycle our Beneath the Sands here. Goblin Dark-Dwellers. So I think we start by casting Hour of Devastation, see if that works. Opponent has a Blossoming Defense on Avacyn. That's fine. Since we still have Sweltering Suns, but I think we are gonna go Goblin Dark-Dwellers, recast Sweltering Suns. And that's going to target Sweltering Suns. And alright, Avacyn is dead. So now we get to attack with our Kozilek. And we still have Goblin Dark-Dwellers that can block the Lumbering Falls. We don't have any 4 mana spells to counter this, and cycling will also not find us any 4 mana spells, so Kozilek down. Opponent's gonna sacrifice a bunch of clues, and we're hoping to draw into another Kozilek or Ulamog. There's a Selfless Spirit, which is fine. And now we're just gonna cycle. Alright, and we found another Kozilek. So we get to keep going here. Alright, draw's not too exciting, but we still get to make a Kozilek, which is pretty exciting. So let's go ahead and attack with our Goblin. I think we wanna play the Weirding Wood, make a clue, and I think we'll sack the clue as well. Alright, there's a Spring to Mind, which we can cast and still have Abrade up. So let's do that. And get a mountain. And say go. So the reason to keep Abrade in hand is in case of another Declaration in Stone. Instead, our opponent has another cast out. So I think now we will cast the Abrade. That works, but our Kozilek will be gone. Opponent sacks a clue, up to 3 cards in hand, and another Lumbering Falls, so we do need to keep those in mind. Alright, game trail to draw. So let's start by cycling. And we drew Hour of Devastation. Not really what we were looking for, so let's also cycle the Sweltering Suns. Find a Tormenting Voice, alright, so now we can get Tormenting Voice, discarding Forest. So we should have enough mana to play the Weirding Wood, get a clue, and then we can still sack the clue and potentially draw into an Ulamog. We also have the Spring to Mind in the graveyard, which we could cast, but I'm gonna try and go for the Ulamog here. We did not find an Ulamog, which is fine. So we can attack for 4. And then play out in Neheb and say go. Declaration in Stone on Neheb. And Lumbering Falls is gonna get frisky. Alright, so let's start by sacrificing this clue. Finds another Tormenting Voice, so let's cast that. I guess now we wanna cast our Mind, which finds another Kozilek. Alright, but now our hand's pretty full, but we do have a 2, a 3, and a 5. We also have these Hashep Oasis and these Ramunap Ruins, which we can't forget. I think we wanna cycle a Sheltered Thicket first, in case we find Ulamog. Alright, there's our Ulamog, so now I feel a lot safer about things. Cast Ulamog, which can get rid of the Lumbering Falls, and I guess the cast out as well. Could just get rid of the 2 Lumbering Falls, but this seems fine. And now we get to attack for 4. Tamiyo Field Researcher, 4 mana, but luckily our opponent doesn't have blue mana left to activate Lumbering Falls. But that could have definitely been a problem here. So Tamiyo taps down our 2 Eldrazi, but a Lumbering Falls can't get in there. End of turn we could cycle the Beneath the Sands, or we can keep it as a 3 mana card to counter something. I think we do still cycle it, since drawing our other Ulamog would be good. There's a Tormenting Voice as well. We don't want Tamiyo tapping down our Dark-Dwellers here. We could also think about our desert, so we can use our 2 Hashep Oasis here on the Goblin Dark-Dwellers, so it can hit for 10, which is I think what we want to do here. So Dark-Dwellers is 7 power. Dark-Dwellers 10 power. And attack our opponents. And that does it, sweet. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play, and this hand unfortunately is not great since we have 2 Kozilek, no red mana, otherwise we could cast a Tormenting Voice on 2 and get rid of 1, and then the hand would have been okay, but with no red mana I think this is an unfortunate mulligan. This hand's also not great since we only have 1 land. It does have all the cards for us to win the game, but we're missing lots of lands, so I don't think we can keep this one either. And this one doesn't have any lands at all, so it's also not going to be a keep. Alright, so we'll keep this one and land on top, play a tap to Game Trail and say go. Up against probably Temur Energy. Hopefully they don't have a Long Tusk Cub. And there's the Long Tusk Cub unfortunately, so that's gonna punish our slow start. We can Weirding Wood. Targeting the forest, get a clue, and if we draw land next turn we can actually play Neheb, which is a decent blocker. A Rogue Refiner, so they're hitting the perfect curve here. Hits us for 4 with the Long Tusk Cub. Alright, there's a land, so we do still have a shot here. Play out Neheb, which can block the Long Tusk Cub currently, unless our opponent adds more energy. Alright, another Rogue Refiner means the Long Tusk Cub can grow up to 6 power, so we won't be able to block it with Neheb. But if we draw land and our opponent doesn't block Neheb, then we still have a shot. Instead we drew another Ulamog. Cub being 6 toughness means it also survives Hour of Devastation. We can sack the clue, see what we draw. But at this point, I think we're just dead. Scavenger Grounds. I think we'll pass it back and hope our opponent doesn't attack with everyone. There's an Ether Hub. If they have a Harness Lightning, we're just dead. If they attack with everyone, we're dead. Another Rogue Refiner. And there's the Harness Lightning, which is gonna kill us here. Alright, we almost had the turn 5 Ulamog if we hit a land drop there. So despite the mulligan to 4, we actually still stood a chance, which is awesome. So let's go to sideboarding. This matchup we don't have to sideboard a ton since our main deck configuration's quite good. Don't mind bringing in the Chandra's Defeat to deal with Chandras and Glorybringers. Sweltering Suns is not at its best in this matchup, since Cub is gonna grow to survive the Sweltering Suns and the Hydra also can be big enough to survive it, while Hour of Devastation itself is awesome in this matchup, so definitely want that. Could see an argument for Tireless Trackers, since it is a pretty grindy matchup. Our opponent's gonna bring in some negates to counter our ramp spells, so the game might take a few extra turns, so having those extra clue tokens might help. Goblin Dark-Dwellers also is not at its best, so I think I just prefer the Tireless Trackers over the Goblin Dark-Dwellers in this matchup, since we don't have something like Sweltering Suns we can get back, and the Tireless Tracker is going to provide a bit more card advantage than the Dark-Dwellers. So let's try it like this and see how it goes. We will be on the play, and this hand looks like a solid keep. So we get to lead with Sheltered Thicket. We have Abrade on 2, Weirding Wood on 3, and then hopefully Hour of Promise or Hour of Devastation on 4. Opponent with a Game Trail into a tune. Now we get to play out our Ruins and pass it back. Another tune, so we won't be casting Abrade this turn. Alright, there's a tracker, but I think we still just want to play out our Weirding Wood. So let's enchant the Ruins and say go. Tireless Tracker from the opponent. And actually here we could go for Hour of Promise, but we could also just go Tireless Tracker plus Abrade, which does sound pretty good, since we also get another clue token out of the deal, and if the tracker survives and we cast Hour of Promise next turn, we get even more clue tokens. Opponent with a Ronas, the Indomitable. That's fine. And we actually have the answer to Ronas in Hour of Devastation here. But I think we'll play the Hashep Oasis, get another clue, and then Hour of Promise, and get 2 Shrines of the Forsaken God, although we only have 2 deserts, so I guess we get 1 shrine and 1 other desert, which is probably gonna be the Oasis. Get 2 more clues. We might as well attack, since our opponent's not blocking. Opponent goes for a Rogue Refiner. And that's it. Alright, so now we can Tormenting Voice, discarding Game Trail if we want to, although I wouldn't mind hitting our land drop. So I think we'll just sacrifice a clue first. We're not gonna cast any big Eldrazi this turn, so we might as well tap our shrines. Alright, there's our big Eldrazi. So that's taken care of. Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have enough mana for Ulamog next turn. So let's see, we can still sack a few clues to our tracker, I guess. Make it survive Hour of Devastation. So don't see a reason to Tormenting Voice here. Let's just play the Game Trail. Don't reveal anything, get another clue. And then attack with the tracker. Could also send the zombies, but I'll keep those as chum blockers. Alright, so let's sack some more clues. Alright, there's an Abrade, which I will keep in hand, so we won't sack our last clue here. So just hit for 6 and say go. Harness Lightning on the tracker. I guess we will sack a clue in response, make our opponent use more energy, since one card that can get us in this matchup is Confiscation Coup, stealing our Ulamog. So that's also why I'm probably gonna get rid of the opponent's blue source here. And making them spend all this energy on the tracker is perfect for us, since that means they're less likely to steal an Ulamog with Confiscation Coup. Alright, no attacks from the opponent. Here I like attacking with our 2 zombies. Opponent blocks, that's fine. And second main, we will be casting a giant Ulamog. And we'll get rid of the 2 blue sources. And that does it, sweet. On to our third game. Let's see, do we want to change anything? I don't think so. Could see an argument for Druid of the Cowl, since now we're on the draw and we might need the extra acceleration. I could see maybe shaving a Tireless Tracker and bring in Druid of the Cowls instead. Does seem reasonable. Maybe shave 2 trackers, bring in 2 druids, since tracker's also worse on the draw, and keep the rest the same. Didn't see any Chandras or Glorybringers yet, but I assume they're in the opponent's deck, so I'm gonna keep in the Chandra's Defeat. And I think the rest is still fine. So let's try it like this. Alright, and we have an opening hand that looks okay, especially if the druid survives. So we'll keep. Opponent did mulligan to 6, but they kept their 6. So let's lead with Sheltered Thicket, say go. And there's a Servant of the Conduit. So we could play our own Druid of the Cowl, or we can just get rid of the Servant right now. Given that our next plays are lined up with Weirding Wood and Hour of Promise, I kind of like disrupting the opponent here over playing our own Druid. If we didn't have this Weirding Wood, then I would probably play the Druid. But since next turn we're tapping out for Weirding Wood and then we're tapping out for Hour of Promise, I don't see the benefit of playing the Druid over disrupting the opponent's plan. Rogue Refiner. So let's go ahead and play Weirding Wood, keeping Forest in hand for game trail purposes. So enchant our Ramunap Ruins and pass a turn. Another Rogue Refiner. Looks like no 4th land though for the opponent, so we will get to cast Hour of Promise, and we even get to play our 3rd desert, so we can just get 2 of our Shrines of the Forsaken Gods. Pass it back. Attune from the opponent, so they do have land number 4. into another Rogue Refiner. I doubt they will attack here. Alright, so let's see, how much mana do we have? Yeah, so we can cast Kozilek here if we so desire. Opponent does have 10 energy, so if they do hit their land drop and have Confiscation Coup and we don't find a 5 mana card with Kozilek, we could be in trouble. So I kind of like waiting one turn with Kozilek here and instead just playing out our hand of Druids and cast Abrade as well. Since we really need these 7 cards to be good, I'm gonna empty our hand here. I don't expect my opponent to have cards like Essence Scatter, and even then we still get to resolve the trigger and draw a bunch of cards. So let's just say go. Opponent does have Tireless Tracker, so we will get to Abrade that. But they did have a land, so let's just kill the Tracker right now, take a damage. Alright, Hour of Devastation. I'm not gonna cast that, but that does mean that we have a counter for Confiscation Coup, which is the big deal here. So now we get to cast our Kozilek and draw 6 cards. Not bad. Get to play Game Trail, Revealing Mountain, and attack for 4. And we're gonna sacrifice a clue end of turn. And yep, there's the Confiscation Coup, so we get to counter that. And next turn Ulamog is gonna blow up some blue lands and gonna win us the game. Alright, sweet, Teamer Energy, pretty easy matchup. And despite a mulligan to 4 in the first game, managed to win the match. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw here and unfortunately no lands. So let's mulligan this and... Alright, this hand's definitely keepable, and we'll scry that to the top. So we have our third land lined up. We don't have a 3 mana ramp spell, which is what we would like to draw. Opponent with Swamp might be on zombies. So here let's play a tapped Game Trail and say go. Another Swamp into Crypt Breaker. Alright, so we could Tormenting Voice here. But the problem is, there's nothing I really want to discard since Hour of Devastation is pretty great in this matchup. And we have one big finisher, we have Hour of Promise that we want to keep. A reason to Tormenting Voice here is to increase the chances of finding a 3 mana ramp spell, so we can go next turn ramp spell into Hour of Promise or Hour of Devastation. But that would mean discarding Abrade, which is our only early interactive spell. So definitely a tricky spot. I could see Tormenting Voice discard Abrade, I could see Tormenting Voice maybe even discard Hour of Devastation, or I could see just play a land and keep up Abrade. I think I want to be more proactive than just casting Abrade here, so I think I will actually go ahead and cast the Tormenting Voice, discarding our Abrade in the hopes of finding a 3 mana ramp spell and maximizing our explosive potential here, at the risk of maybe not finding what we need and dying a horrible death. Alright, we did find land and another Hour of Promise, so not the best, but also not the worst. Our opponent might also play around sweeper effects, making them play out their hand a bit slower. Opponent hits us for 1 with a Crypt Breaker, don't mind seeing that. They might also have a handful of removal spells, which would be ideal. Instead they play out Diregraph Colossus, which could be a problem, but there we go, we found our Weirding Wood. Unfortunately, Sheltered Thicket will come into play tapped, but if we can find an untapped land next turn, we're in business. So I think I will still go for the Weirding Wood here. And then hope to find an untapped land, otherwise we'll be able to cast our 5 drops on turn 5, which is still okay. So now our opponent's gonna play a bunch of zombies, which might play into our Hour of Devastation. If they don't, and just play 1 zombie, then they're prolonging the game, which I think favors us. They're gonna go with a Metallic Mimic, naming zombie, and do they play out another zombie? They do, another Crypt Breaker. Alright, so we really want to be able to cast Hour of Devastation here. Instead, another Sheltered Thicket is unfortunate. think we will start by drawing with our clue here. Fine and Neheb. Alright, we'll play out a tapped Sheltered Thicket and pass a turn. And I don't think we'll cycle this Sheltered Thicket, since we know our place for the next couple turns and don't mind having an additional land. Opponent draws a card with their Crypt Breaker ability, and they're gonna hit us for a whole bunch. Down to 7 in fact. We didn't want to see Relentless Dead here, because now our opponent gets to return Diregraph Colossus, and it will have a whole bunch of +1/+1 counters on it. But I still don't think we want to cycle the Sheltered Thicket. So now the opponent can pay 3 to return the Diregraph Colossus, which will see itself along with 3 other zombies. So it will come into play as a 6/6, if I'm not mistaken. So that means we're dead to a Liliana's Mastery or a Lord. Yep. So yeah, missing that untapped land really hurt us. If they don't have a Mastery or a Lord, then we might still have a shot. So we go down to 1. So now we can cast Hour of Promise, getting 1 desert, and then a Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. Maybe should have gotten our desert to exile the graveyard, but either way I don't think we'll have the time to use that one. So right now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it doesn't really matter if we play the tapped Sheltered Thicket here or just cycle it, since we'll have 10 mana either way next turn. So I think I will cycle the Thicket end of turn. If our opponent has 2 removal spells, we're also just dead, so there's a Fatal Push. And a Grasp. Yep, alright, so unfortunate that we missed that untapped land there. Maybe had we kept our Abrade, things would have been a bit different. And of course the Relentless Dead came at the right time for the opponent as well. Alright, let's take a look at our sideboard, where we get Sweltering Suns as an addition. I don't mind the Magma Sprays as early interaction that also exiles recursive threats. Could see shaving an Abrade. Sand Strangler is okay as well, but not great. I don't think we want the Tireless Trackers here. Opponent will be bringing in a bunch of discard effects. Could actually see Tireless Tracker doing some work, but the question is, do we have anything we want to take out for it instead? And I don't think we want to. Maybe we'll shave a Tormenting Voice, but given that we have the extra Sweltering Suns, I could see just getting rid of the Abrades altogether and trying it like this. On the play, Tireless Tracker is certainly better, but our opponent's still going to keep in their Dark Salvations, which still kills the tracker, so I don't think we want to deal with that mess. Maybe we want to take out the Goblin Dark-Dwellers, but they can flash back a Sweltering Suns, which is pretty great, especially if our opponent doesn't exile the Sweltering Suns with Hand Disruption, since now people play Lay Bare the Heart instead of Transgress the Mind, which Transgress would exile the Sweltering Suns while Lay Bare does not, so Dark-Dwellers can still flash back a Sweltering Suns if the opponent takes it early. So I think we'll try it like this, and definitely want to be on the play. And yep, this looks like a keep. So we can lead with Game Trail, Revealing Mountain to represent Magma Spray. Opponent does have the Crypt Breaker. Alright, let's play the Oasis and say go. So we could cycle the Beneath the Sands, and then play the Weirding Wood on 3, and then on 4 play the Dark-Dwellers, get back the Beneath the Sands. Seems okay. Opponent hits us for 1, and plays Relentless Dead. Alright, I wouldn't mind drawing into one of our sweepers here. So I think I will cycle the Beneath the Sands. There's a Spring to Mind, and a Mountain, so I think we just play Weirding Wood over Spring to Mind here. A reason to play Spring over the Weirding Wood is that with cards like Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, you actually want 7 lands, which the Weirding Wood doesn't help you with. But given that we don't have any shrines yet, I think I'm okay with going for Weirding Wood here over Spring to Mind. So let's go for it. opponent with a Transgress the Mind here, which can take our Goblin Dark-Dwellers or our Ulamog. But with this Bring to Mind, we do have some card advantage lined up. They do decide to take the Dark-Dwellers. And there's our Shrine, so not a bad draw. I think we still just want to Spring and then crack the Clue. I could see cracking the Clue first in case we find a Sweeper effect. So let's do that. Reason to Spring first is that it gets rid of a land in our deck. Alright, we found Hour of Promise, which isn't bad, so let's cast Spring. Get a mountain, or actually a forest here. We have plenty of mountains in hand. And say go. So next turn we have Hour of Promise if our opponent doesn't take it, with 2 deserts in play already. Another Crypt Breaker. And another Transgress. Alright, that's annoying. So now they get to take Hour of Promise. But we're a Sweltering Suns top deck away from getting rid of all these zombies. Alright, our opponent decides to take Ulamog instead. Don't mind that. So play Ramunap Ruins. Get 2 more Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. Could actually also go 1 Shrine and 1 Scavenging Grounds or Scavenger Grounds. Since, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, we'll have plenty of mana for our Eldrazi. The question is if we cycle and then wanna be able to cast one of our 10 mana Eldrazi, then having the additional shrines is beneficial. Yeah, I think I'll still go with double shrine. Is this a Dark Salvation? No, a Lord of the Accursed. That's fine. An attack with the Relentless Death, so if we double block, they just get it back. Opponent can give their zombies Menace next turn as well. So yeah, I think we're fine blocking here actually. Opponent gets back the Relentless Death. Perfect, there's our Sweltering Suns. So now we get to send in for 2 and our opponent will know what's coming. This doesn't play around Magma Spray on their part, but they probably know that the Sweltering Suns is coming here. So they do still get to draw a card, but at least we got rid of a few zombies. And now we're just an Eldrazi top deck away from winning the game. Double Relentless Dead. Alright. Don't think we want to start activating any of our deserts quite yet. There's Liliana's Mastery, not what we wanted to see. So now we have 1 turn to top deck basically. Sheltered Thicket, we can cycle. And Scavenger Grounds is not gonna do it, unfortunately. Alright, so did not manage to beat the zombie horde. Got a little bit unlucky in the first game, and our opponent had a timely Transgress the Mind in the second game here. But overall I think this is a pretty close matchup, and I don't mind being on either side. So I want to thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for supporting the channel, and you can do so yourself as well over at patreon.com/LegenVD, where you get cool rewards for supporting the channel, as well as getting us closer to our goals, where with every goal reached we will release an additional weekly series. So if you want to see more content, Patreon is the place to go.